Verify that we've been through all the right vocab in 6.3, and you'll definitely be taking notes today and making some corrections in assignment 6.3. I got to go really quickly today because I'm really rushing through these abbreviated periods to get into a story that I haven't successfully finished yet. First of all, in the vocab, my wife makes fun of me because I literally get hiccups when I drink.
I get hiccups every time I eat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's horrible. First of all, carcinogen, mutagen, teratogen. Did we do those yesterday?
Yes.
Did we do methylation yesterday?
Yes.
Did we do grasshopper effect yesterday?
Yes.
And did we do bioremediation, phytoremediation, and microremediation?
Yes.
Awesome. Because we were talking about mushrooms and microremediation, remember it's not micro like M-I-C-R-O, it's myco like M-Y-C-O like mycorrhiza. The stuff underneath the mushroom. You remember yesterday I was talking about how we're all designed for hunting and gathering, I think. Did I talk about that?
Yeah.
Our bodies are very simple. They're made for one really good task, and we're really good at hunting and gathering. I have a perfect example for you, which is perfectly timely, because it is now mushroom season. Today, I was talking to one of my students in another period, and I taught her big sister like 3 years ago. You guys know Paige Mascari?
We all know everyone.
I taught her sister the other Mascari, I think it was Emma. And I swear, I just took a kind of a gut feeling on the name. I've totally forgotten her name. But talking to Paige today, I was like, oh, remember to look for mushrooms when you leave your driveway, like right across the driveway. There's like the leaves, and then if you go up the road, there's like that little trailhead with that wooden fence right down there on the left post. And she was like, that's exactly where they are. And I was like, I know, because I'm a hunter-gatherer, and I'm built to remember stuff like that. I'm not built to remember names. No, seriously, like, I can tell you where the mushrooms are at Will's house. Like, for sure. 2 different kinds, by the way. Trampoline over this way, the other trampoline that way, and then, of course, up the hill over there.
Wait, which way? That way?
Well, ranch. The reason this came up is it's mushroom season, so I ask all my students to keep their eyes open. There's 3 things you could do. One of them is the most important. Just keep your eyes open and start paying attention to life in your environment. Because you don't live in a concrete jungle. You live in a thriving, complex ecosystem that's been infiltrated by development. So I encourage my students to just notice that there are mushrooms, and that's the first thing you can do, and that's it. Second of all, another thing is, send me photographs when you see them. As long as they're focused, hit me up on my cell phone. I counted. I received like 1,000 some number of pictures of mushrooms last year. Like, I get a lot of photographs, and I love it. It's not a hassle. I answer to almost all of them. And just based on a well-focused photograph, I can give you like, don't worry about it, or bring it right away, it's awesome, or look for this, and then we'll decide. So if you send me a good photo, like a focused photograph, like a close-up photo, that'd be really great. And third of all, if it's not wet, and if it's larger than a golf ball, and if you can put it in a paper bag or a box, bring it. I don't need you to collect every one of them, because if it sucks, you'll just waste your time. But if you can get like 1 or 2 or 3, and it's not wet, and it's bigger than a golf ball, and you can put it in paper, bring it. Just so you know, it's mushroom season right now. It'll remain mushroom season roughly until school ends. Mushrooms don't stick around for a long time. They're not like trees. Like, it's not going to be there next year. The mushroom will last, some of them 12 hours, some of them 3 or 4 days, some of them as much as a week and a half, but they don't last forever. So if you see it, either forget about it and move on and just be happy to know your environment better. Or if you're just busy and you don't have a paper bag and you're like on a jog, take a photograph and send it to you, that'd be great. Or if you're kind of curious and you've got the time and you like to geek out a little bit, you want to get as much of the mushroom as possible, including the stuff underground. You don't want to pick all of them. We don't want to mess it up if it's something we cannot eat. And you want to bring it in paper, never in plastic. Never in plastic, paper. Okay, we'll talk later. All right, now, study goals. Number 52, hormonally active agents are not hormones. They just look like hormones because your bodies are stupid. Oh yeah, there's something. I don't know if we have, if the copy lady is, oh no, she won't be there. It's 11. I'm sure she's gone. I need photocopies, but it's too late to make them. So no, I think we're good, dude. Yeah, we're totally good. Thanks, bro. Yeah, bye. Oh, well, here, you can put these in the fridge for me, please.
Batteries?
Yes, they last for me. Please remember that hormonally active agents are not hormones. Your bodies are just really simple, and so they mistake it. Have you heard, for example, that you're not supposed to eat a ridiculous abundance of soy? Why not? It's not actually estrogen. It's a chemical that is not a hormone in the plant. In the plant, it's like, I don't know what the hell it does. It's got nothing to do with hormones. But when that gets into your blood, it still has the parts that fit inside the lock that tells your body, oh my God, that's estrogen, even though it's not estrogen. So ladies, like superdosing estrogen, if you have a single cancer cell, estrogen encourages the growth of your lady parts. So if you have a single cancer cell in a lady part, it would just raise the likelihood of uterine or breast cancer. And dudes eat a lot of soy because then you can stay home because you grow boobs. It's the only reason we leave the house, right? Yeah, I guess some of us have. It's not just soy and phytoestrogen and estrogen, though. There's a whole bunch of industrial chemicals that act like hormones. You know they're not hormones. So we have like a whole global epidemic of hermaphrodite fish and hermaphrodite amphibians because they live in water where all of our pollution ends up. There's a bunch of industrial chemicals which confuse their bodies. So the frog's like, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, and they grow both parts. Often that makes them less effective at either job. And so hormonal confusion occurs because these things which aren't hormones but look like hormones to our simple bodies confuse our hormone systems. Number 53, I've got nothing to add unless there's a question. Seriously. Brass knuckles one of these days.
A boom.
Boomerang, yeah, boomerang.
There you go, walk over.
You guys know that I know how to throw a boomerang? Yeah, when I was in junior high, my dad's a nerd, he's a nerd. He taught physics and stuff, so he's like, here son, have a boomerang. Sweet dad, thanks. Right. So when the wind's coming at you, you want to shoot 30 degrees to the right of the wind, and you want to angle the boomerang like 50 degrees off vertical.
You throw it like this.
Does it come right back to you?
It never comes right back. You want to throw it kind of flat, and it'll like pick up into the wind, and then it'll drop from the wind, and then it kind of comes in your neighborhood. I've caught it a few times. You got to catch it through the middle. That's the other part. When it comes at you, it's going like super effing fast. Oh, great! It's like, oh! You're like, no, yeah, you don't want it to.
Yeah, it makes like intimidating noises.
Yeah. All right. Anyway. This isn't math skills, and a lot of my students are nervous about the warm-up because they suck at math, but I swear, and I'm going to do this quickly because I have to move on. I swear this only requires a very, very, very simple mathematic principle that I have to assume everybody's already seen. Please look up at the whiteboard. Is there a simpler way to write that? 1/2 or 0.5 or 50%, right? Now, I'm going to assume that most of you know if I add zeros on both sides, it doesn't change anything. That's also 1/2, right? And if I cross off zeros on both sides, that's still 1/2, right? At least you're trying, and then you're not. Okay. Now, if you understand that mathematic principle, that's all the math required to do those. That's all the math. Now, separate from math, there's unfortunately some English. Parts per million means parts over 1 million. Like parts per 100 is also known as parts per cent, is also known as percentage. You guys know that? So please look up. Percent is also whatever it is over 100. Like 2 over 100 is 2%, right? You all know that?
Yeah.
So watch. Parts per million is that number over 1 million. Like this. Those are the same. Are we okay with that? If I want to translate parts per million into percentage, I am given this, but I want to get to that. So all I'm going to do is shave off zeros on both sides, which you all understand as a mathematical principle. It doesn't change the value, it just writes it differently. Right? So watch me. I have to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 times to get 100. Is that fair? So I'll do that also up here. 1, 2, 3, 4 times. There's my decimal. I go 1, 2, fill in the zeros, and that's over 100 now, and that is a percentage. Ta-da! Ta-da! I'm the greatest! I win! Victory! Look, I can do it for billion too. It's not that big of a deal. Parts per million, billion just means more zeros on the bottom. So 7.3, that's just parts over a billion. And if I want to make that into 100, I've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And I'm going to count the zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 zeros are added. So here I go. 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 3. The same. Goal! And the crowd goes wild. Yeah, right for me.
The crowd yells.
Notice, it requires a bit of English language to know that parts per billion means a number over 1 billion. But that's not rocket science. I think you get it. And then, it's not exactly calculus BC to change the zeros on the top and the bottom equally without changing the meaning of the number. So you can rewrite this as that, and it means the same thing. You know the only reason that we have units like parts per million and parts per billion? Because mathematicians and scientists that write numbers a lot are just lazy, and it gets old writing all those stupid zeros. That's it. Sometimes you get lost in all the zeros. So we invent units just to simplify the numbers and get rid of all the stupid zeros, and that's all we did there. Now, when we say milligrams per kilogram, you should just know that milligram per kilogram is another way of saying parts per million. If you want to know the reason, please look up. 1 kilogram has 1,000 grams, and each gram has 1,000 milligrams. So there are 1 million milligrams per kilogram, or 1 milligram over a million kilograms. Parts per million, like that. 1,000 times 1,000. And one of these is 1,000 of those, and one of those is 1,000 of those, so it's 1 over a million. Parts per million. If you don't understand 1,000 times 1,000, just call it parts per million, which is parts per 1,000 times 1,000. So you treat it the same way. You do this, you do 4, and you get 0, 0, 0, 1. Anybody else want to ask me anything about these? Number 55 had some examples from the book that should go into your mandatory trivia file. I've told you there are some facts that you'll probably never know all of. Those are the good luck trivia. And then there's the certain trivia that you just have to know because like everybody knows about Chernobyl. So smelting, dioxin, and Minamata Bay are like Chernobyl. Everybody has to know about it. It's not rocket science. They're just stories that everybody has to know. We just yawn back and forth all day. It's our special relationship that we share. Oh yeah, that's the whole class. I went to the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and they have a video screen that just constantly reels people yawning. And you're supposed to sit there and try not to yawn.
Super hard.
And apparently, if you don't yawn, you're like a sociopath or something weird. And like one of my best friends went with us and my children, and he didn't yawn. And I was like, how come you're not yawning right now? He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's been looking at this, and he's like, yeah, man, this is the boringest thing ever. I just sat there and watched him. I was like, just sit there for a minute. He's like, okay. He just watched this reel of like hundreds of people just like yawn, 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 yawn.
The scientists know why you yawn.
No, it's a mystery. A, we don't know why we do it, and B, we don't know why it's contagious. Double mystery.
Christians warn.
In number 56. In number 56. You should know that pollution is a central issue on the AP test. So number 56 as a list is definitely triple stars. Definitely, definitely, definitely. However, your book does a really good job with most of that. There are just 3 types of pollution that I want to discuss now. If you had questions, you could also ask me. But first, what is persistent organic pollution? A POP. What does that mean? What's persistent? Continuous, kind of. What else?
Unrelenting.
Doesn't stop, unrelenting. We're getting there. Persistent organic pollution. That's like not allowed. When I brought my dogs to this school, I got so much trouble. Well, they were kind of wild dogs.
Rottweilers.
They were wolves. Yeah, they were a little bit.
I can see you owning a wolf.
May or may not have been good.
So, persistent. Up here, up here, up here.
Guys, you need me. I'm late. This isn't a tour without playing.
Thank you. Persistent is a type of pollution which lasts for a long time. So it's a chemical which is very stable. And I have a perfect example for you. DDT. Every molecule of DDT that was ever made by humans on Earth is still on the planet somewhere. DDT is pretty persistent. I'm kind of exaggerating. I'd say maybe 95% or 90%. But like dioxin, literally every molecule of dioxin ever made, or at least 99.999, they're all still on the planet. And they'll probably be here for hundreds of millions of years, by the way. Because they are persistent. The point of that is that that chemical is stable. You know Roundup? If you drink a gallon of Roundup right now, you're dead meat. But if you leave Roundup in a clear jar on the driveway for like a week, don't quote me on this, it breaks down so that there's much less Roundup in your jar. Because it's not a stable compound, the ultraviolet light breaks the bond and it stops being Roundup. I don't know, it might even become something more dangerous. The point is that it's, yeah, I'm not going to say you should drink it. The point I'm trying to make is that that chemical is not persistent. Roundup is unstable in ultraviolet. Today, most pesticides and herbicides, they're designed to fall apart when they get wet or when they go out in the sun. They're unstable, they're impersistent on purpose.
Then how does it work?
That's the whole point. They're like time sensitive. So you spray it, it kills the bugs, but in a couple of days you can go back to the field and it's safe to work.
Wait, pesticides are
Nowadays, most commercial pesticides are less persistent than the original pesticides made like 30, 40 years ago. Those were highly persistent, and that's why they're so dangerous now. They're still a problem because they're still floating around the food web. Yeah?
What does DBD stand for?
I've never known. What does organic mean when we talk about chemistry?
Carbon.
Carbon-based. Anybody know why that's a problem?
Because you can add carbon as a methyl group.
Because your body.
That's right. That's right. Because like methylation, when your cells see the carbon, they absorb it.
My phone.
I think so, yeah. Which one is it? Michael?
No, my phone.
So he was here today, Hey, are we still down this afternoon? Yeah. 3:30 work? Yeah, I'll make sure that's
Mike?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then I said Melissa instead of Marissa yesterday.
There, Michael.
So, persistent organic pollutants are very stable, and they have a carbon atom in them, so your cells soak them up, and that's why they're so dangerous, because they survive in the ecosystem, and our cells soak them up. I just remembered why I marked absent. I knew I didn't. Persistent organic pollutants like this, if they're a stable compound and they have a carbon, that's an especially dangerous type of pollution because you just keep passing it around the food web, and then you like eat the tuna and then it's bad for you, and then you decompose and then there's more tuna and you eat tuna and it's bad for you. So it keeps being dangerous. The other pollution I wanted to talk about, you guys remember this map? Where we stitched together a world map with no clouds by taking 5 years of satellite photos and photoshopping? Now, check out that one up there. Right over here. That's the nighttime version. Now, I'll explain quickly, but there's a lot of interesting conversations we don't have time for. Red is for burning natural gas, so you can see Russia does a lot of that. Yellow is for forest fires, so you can see Australia, Central Africa, and parts of South America have a lot of forest fires. Light blue is for nighttime fishing, so you can see we do a lot of that in the open oceans in the middle now. But what I want to talk about is the white, which are city lights, also known as light pollution. A lot of you have heard of light pollution. A lot of you have heard of light pollution as a thing that hippies like me complain about. Hippies like me, we say, oh man, I can't see the stars, this sucks, I hate the city. Because, you know, stars are kind of nice. Has anybody here ever been to a place where you can actually see like a really nice nighttime sky, it's really clear and beautiful? Like, you gotta admit, it's kind of a spectacular thing, right? And so, one reason to complain about light pollution is the loss of aesthetic value. That's like a human priority, like, oh, I like the stars, and I can't see them, woe is me. But that's just one reason, and I need to know the ecological problems. First of all, a lot of migratory birds target bodies of water, and when you're flying at night, how the hell do you know if there's water down there? It reflects the moon and the stars, like little flickering white lights in an area, which is exactly what New York City looks like from the sky. So a lot of birds will go down to the lake and they're like, oh, dang it, it's just another city. And they either waste a lot of energy, or they come closer to predatory animals, or they get tangled up in power lines or lost in a city or confused or whatever. So one problem with light pollution is it really affects migratory animals, and it's not just the ones in the sky. It also affects terrestrial migration and even aquatic migration. The other really sad story about light pollution is that when sea turtles hatch out of the sand, a lot of times they don't know where the ocean is unless they see some light reflecting off the water. But if they blow it, they go into the streets of Miami. They're like, oh, there's like light over there. That's probably the moon coming up. And so we'll just paddle over someone's front yard and get eaten by a dog or something.
What?
It's apparently like a major cause of mortality for sea turtles today, that a lot of the hatchlings don't survive because of light pollution. The last one that I want to talk about is sound pollution. And many of my students don't understand. I'm not talking about like loud music from the concert. Sound pollution scares off a lot of animals that are very sensitive to sound. Now I can't figure out which period Cardona is in. Did you see my last year?
Yes.
Try to go with the dad now.
Who is this?
Michael Cardona? I think it was last year. All right. Sound pollution scares off animals that are sensitive to sound, and you have to realize that's sort of like using coyote pesticide all around your city. You know, sound travels pretty far, and a lot of animals are very sensitive to sound, you know, like mammals. And so when they hear the sound, they just stay like 2 miles away from their city or 3 miles away from their city. And so you get these like concentric rings of missing species around the city just because that's how far the sound carries. I live in Holland Meadows during the summers, and whenever they shut down the road, it is shocking how many coyotes come out of the woods. It's nuts. They're everywhere. But when the people are up there, nobody ever sees them. Okay. I'm done with 56 unless you had a question about one of the pollution types. Okay. So I need to clarify a definition that your book kind of fumbled in number 57. And in order to do this, I need you to take out your wallet. Now, if you have like disgusting, embarrassing, secret, private sleaziness in your wallet, I guess you should keep it hidden. There's nothing wrong with that. Although apparently it's a bad way to carry them. Yeah. They don't travel well. Okay, so the definition your book gave you for biomagnification is fine, but the definition your book gave you for bioaccumulation is horrible, and you're going to cross that out. Now, what does it mean to accumulate things? Just put away a lot. Okay, cool.
Put all together.
Yeah, so to accumulate is to like put together. What else? Build up. To gather. To accumulate is like to collect things. Yeah, accumulate is to collect over time. That's perfect. So now, here comes my example. Do you guys realize that being a teacher is not like the highest paying job in the world? Right. So you can probably imagine, in addition to being a high school teacher, I'm also a pickpocket.
I think so.
I drink a lot of whiskey. You got to pay for it somehow. So it's not cheap.
That's whiskey.
That's fun. So watch. When Grab's not looking, I go scoop, and I grab his wallet. Waste of time.
I'm broke.
So. Hot damn, thanks. Whoa! Seriously. You are, I can see that. Dang, bro.
He's gonna hit the strip club after this.
Now, I'll tell you a little story. When I was in the 3rd grade, I lived on the same block as the United States Post Office. And, also. When the Postal Service can't deliver mail, they throw it away in these big old trash cans and they put a lock on it because that's private information. You're not allowed to steal the mail. But, 3rd graders are pretty skinny, and the chain wasn't really tight. And so I stole a whole bunch of mail. Which is a felony.
That's a federal offense. Awesome.
I don't know, but there's evidence on the internet now.
Yeah, they're like, finally the mail stealing.
There's like some department like, got him! Okay. So, it wasn't a lot. I didn't really find anything valuable. But I didn't really understand how things worked. I had just arrived in this country. I didn't have experience with credit cards. And I knew that you use credit cards to buy stuff, but I didn't really get it. And so whenever people had stuff that looked like credit cards in that mail, I kept them all. I'm not really smart, And so I had this big stash of credit cards. As it turns out, those don't do you any good because you often need to verify identity and you usually have to activate a credit card when it's delivered through the mail. So when you get it, it's not live until you call from your home and find a way to activate it. I didn't know that. So imagine, I'm a pickpocket, but I'm not very smart. So I grabbed 2 things. I grabbed 2 things out of the wallets that I steal. I grabbed cash and I grabbed plastic. You clear with that? That night, I go to the liquor store and I'm like, hi, I'd like to buy $7 million worth of whiskey, please. Thank you. And I use up my cash. Then I go, and can I get some more whiskey, please? And they go, no, you can't use that credit card. And I go, well. So then the next day, I'm still thirsty. So I pick another pocket. Remember, I steal 2 things. Pick another pocket. And that night, I go over to the liquor store and I say, all right, I'd like to buy $9 worth of whiskey. And they go, there's no whiskey worth $9. I'm like, fine, just pour it in my hand. So then the next day, I find another victim, and I steal some more money, and I steal another credit card.
Okay, we're all really rich.
Yeah. And then I go to the liquor store that night. And I'm like, hi, I'd like to buy some more whiskey, please. And I say, hey, can I use this? And they go, nope. And I go, oh, thank you.
Why is this so much?
Because identity check or whatever reason. So then I go to school the next day. And I steal me some more cash. And I steal me some more credit card. And I go to the store that night, and I say, hi, can I get $8 worth of sport in my hand? And then I steal another credit card, I can't use that. Okay? Now, I want everybody to realize something, that I've been trying to make a lesson out of this. I am behaving like yourselves. I know it looks useful. Your cells know that carbon looks useful. And your cells are usually right. Like when I steal cash, your cells can spend the sugar and they can spend the fat and they metabolize that and they use it. And they go on being happy cells. And it's not like that's built up, right? Because the useful stuff you take in, you put out. Does that make sense, everybody? So just like a cell that has access to sugar and fat, those don't really pile up because the cell metabolizes them. Just like I went through that cash I took in. Does that make sense, everybody? You following the metaphor here? Yeah. But notice what's happening. Every day that goes by, I have more and more and more useless stuff that I thought was useful. That is accumulating. Your bodies, whenever they see this, they go, oh, looks useful, and they absorb it. But then they never use that. That's not metabolically handy. It's not like sugar and fat. They can't take that to the liquor store and buy whiskey with it. So your cells just keep accumulating this crap. It's not useful. They're just not very smart. They're not very picky. They're just taking it in and taking it in and taking it in and taking it in. Oh, that's not even yours. That's awesome. All right. You're a lucky boy. So when you run away from home, you got a ticket flat. That's good time.
And frequent flyer miles.
I'd like to remind you of something before the bell rings, then you can pack it up. Biomagnification is a trophic phenomenon. Biomagnification is a thing that happens as you go up the food web. But bioaccumulation happens within an individual organism, technically within the cells of an individual organism. Bioaccumulation is the buildup of useless things that were mistakenly absorbed because they look useful inside of an organism. Okay? We'll pick up here tomorrow. Bye-bye, children.
Did you ever find like a birthday card with money in it when you stole mail?
I don't remember that. I wish I had.
That's awesome.
I was stealing, so I'm sure I would have used it if I found it. I also felt like I was salvaging. I was going to the